Glad to have you with me this week. Talking UFC 269, rounding out the year with an incredible pay-per-view, man. You know, in the main event, we've got the lightweight build-up for grabs between Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier. And then the co-main event, return of the women's GOAT. She's defending her bantamweight strap. You got Amanda Nunes fighting Julianna Pena.
Deserving challenger.
For sure, man. 15 fights scheduled from top to bottom. You know, haven't had the weigh-ins yet. I'm hoping all these stay together for Saturday. If you haven't already, man, do us a quick favor. Throw a like down below, sub to the channel. Before we get down to business, I'll give you the honors of going through the ass whooping we took last week.
Yeah, pretty horrendous week. We started off with a Jimmy Crute bet. Got knocked out cold, flatlined. We just didn't take into account the speed disadvantage that Crute would be in. And then we go to the Alonzo Menifield fight against William Knight. No, he's a little bit more salty than I am. I was tuning in and out of that fight, but
William Knight, get off the cage, man. You know, regardless if he doesn't do anything, in my opinion, you know, William Knight couldn't get off the cage. So in my opinion, Alonzo was doing enough. And then those last 45 seconds, nothing was really landing. A little salty about it, but you know, one other time we'll get burnt on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, and then another one that we did not get burnt on the judges' scorecards. We took Luis Smolka, and man, we don't like Luis Smolka. We know not to bet him, and we ended up taking a stab and paying for it.
Juice as well.
Then we had a parlay that we thought was a lock. Morono looked good.
30-27.
30-27, and then Allen, man. Chris Curtis has been kicking the shit out of me personally this year.
Taking all my money.
Yeah, I've had him against Hawes and against Allen here, and he's made me pay. He's definitely one of the breakout fighters of 2021. So that parlay was busted, and then our last bet, Darian Weeks, inside the distance versus Brian Barberena. Turns out Barberena still has the durability on his side.
And Lynn Witt was maybe a little bit better than than Weeks was as well. But I think Weeks still has winnable fights in the UFC. But like you said, durability for Brian definitely still there, man.
For sure. In our main event, we have Charles Oliveira, who's looking to defend his belt for the first time against Dustin Poirier. Charles Oliveira, he's been in the UFC for over a decade now and has kind of blossomed into, from being this kid with a sneaky submission game into this absolute killer with a completely rounded out MMA skill set. As we know, he has the record for the most submissions in the UFC. His ground game, his records, they speak for themselves. But he has been, using his striking more and more recently, and we saw that in his last fight against Michael Chandler, where he got that left hook before finishing him on the ground. Beautiful. I'm not trying to say that his striking is on the level of Dustin Poirier. Dustin has kind of ultimately solidified himself as the best striker in the division, beating our boy McGregor, Gaethje, Holloway, and Hooker. And then on top of that, Dustin Poirier, one of the big X factors coming into this fight is his heart. That's something where if this becomes, one of those wars of attrition, I think we'll see Dustin Poirier ending up getting his hand raised. Charles in the past has also kind of been known to be a quitter, which I think that he's kind of overcome that, especially as he's aged, has this experience level and everything. But I don't think that he has the ability to get this fight to the ground, and if Dustin Poirier does kind of keep it standing, I think that he'll probably have the edge here. He'll be the bigger fighter, and at 155 I don't have any problems with Poirier's chin holding up either. To me, it's kind of crazy that this is the first time we're seeing these guys face off, considering how long they've been in the UFC. But I'm glad it's happening.
And me too, man. The more and more I dug into this fight, honestly, the more excited I got about it. And there is no way that this extends this streak of main events going the distance, man. I absolutely think that this probably doesn't hit rounds 3 or 4. But yeah, just to basically kind of reiterate what you said, you talk about Charles coming into the UFC. He's 20 years old at the time, and he's fighting, Jim Miller, Cowboy Cerrone, couple fights in, just the cream of the crop. And man, he's finally now starting to piece those wins together. He's 32 years old, and it's just constant improvements in the area like you talked about. I think it was probably like the David Tamer fight, but now he's starting to find these finishes with his hands, like the Jared Gordon, the Michael Chandler fight. His boxing looks incredible. In the Michael Chandler fight, he came out there and threw an incredible calf kick, spun Chandler around immediately. I think that's something he should really look to use here with Poirier being so heavy of a boxing stance. You saw Jim Miller and Justin Gaethje really have success with tearing up the lead leg of Poirier. And that's where I think, outside of his submission game, Charles could have a little bit of success. But it's the intangibles, like you kind of talked about Dustin's heart. He's got that dog in him that, like Justin Gaethje said, he just doesn't think Charles Oliveira has in him. And I really couldn't agree more with Dustin Poirier. Honestly, as smooth as it gets, like you talked on the feet, it's always I don't even want to say 4-punch, 5-punch combinations because he put like 20 on our boy against the fence, and he's a right-handed southpaw, so his lead hand has got all the power in it. It's got a strong jab. Again, referencing the McGregor fight, put him down with just that short right hook. There's a whole lot to love about Dustin Poirier. There really is. But at the same time, like you said, man, Charles is really developing into an absolute killer. I think his path is 100% to get this done inside the distance. But I think Poirier by TKO is the route that I'm going to take. Dustin Poirier is sitting under like minus 170. So the play I've got personally is Dustin Poirier's money line. But I don't think this fight sees the 4th or the 5th round, and I think that's a lock.
Yeah, I hope that that's the case, but we've been so wrong on that, man. So I think we will lay off of that, but I'm with you. I think both of us will be playing fight doesn't go to decision, putting that in the parlay.
Yes, sir. In the co-main event, we got the women's bantamweight strap up for grabs. We have Amanda Nunes, 21-4, taking on Julianna Pena, who's 10-4. I don't really know how much time I can spend on it. As far as money line value, it's kind of dog or pass. There's little to no value in Amanda Nunes money line, which we're pretty much getting used to at this point. Women's GOAT, 100%, man, beating just about all the names there is. Terror on the feet, what she does most perfectly. I always resemble her to Max Holloway a little bit, the way she's just able to keep girls right on the tail end of her punches. Really good range. And just overall, man, she's got really good jiu-jitsu, really good wrestling as well. It's going to be hard for me to see her losing this fight. If I got to make a case for Julianna Pena, Amanda Nunes has not made 135 pounds since UFC 245 when Colby and Usman fought for the very first time. So, making weight back down to 135 after fighting comfortably at featherweight twice after having a kid, that could be my only concern for Nunes if Pena were able to survive like an early onslaught and maybe find a way to get on top of her. Historically, Nunes has obviously improved her ground game, but before, that was definitely how you used to beat Amanda Nunes, was get her down and get on top of her. But like you said, I don't think Julianna Pena is even a rightful deserving contender, especially when you have, I know Caitlin Vera just fought, but, there's other girls, Irene Aldana and stuff in there that definitely deserve it more. Pick is Amanda Nunes by TKO, and I know we're looking at probably playing her by TKO.
Yeah, the TKO is definitely the best way that you can get value on Amanda Nunes at this point. You touched on pretty much every point I wanted to. If Pena does wind up on top, it could get Nunes into some trouble. Otherwise, I think Nunes will have the size, strength, and striking advantage. I doubt that she even tries to bring the fight to the mat, bring it into Julianna Pena's world. I like you touched on the weight cut of Nunes. I do think that that'll be the biggest challenge for her this week. And barring a slip up from Amanda, I think we see Pena just get her ass whooped on Saturday, and it's just a matter of when she'll get her ass whooped. The over under set at 1.5, and I think it probably finishes around that point as well.
I know we just took Amanda Nunes TKO at minus 155 on Bet Online, but just prior to this, it was sitting at minus 145 on FanDuel. And somebody dropped a bomb on that, making it like minus 330. So if you're on the Nunes side, like you said, I don't see her going to Pena's world. I like her by TKO.
And Pena's been finished in her last 2 losses.
Exactly.
Like, this is definitely her toughest test to date, and she's dropping it to other girls. So.
And like you said, 2-2, and I don't give her shame to losing to Valentina. But Nico Montano, that's not really that good of a win. She was the flyweight champion, and then to get submitted by Jermaine Durandamine, who's a Muay Thai striker, and then, rewatching that Sarah McCann fight, she's losing every single minute of that until Sarah McCann gasses. So, not a rightful deserving person.
Not to mention, McMahon's fucking 40.
Yeah.
So, it's, nothing about that impresses me enough to earn this title shot, but that is the women's 135-pound division.
For sure. Nunes going to TKO her probably rounds 1 or 2, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I'd say so. Our next fight takes place in the welterweight division, where we see Geoff Neal taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. We locked in our Ponzinibbio bet when we saw that Neal had been dealing with some legal troubles 16 days out of the fight. I know that he's claiming that he wasn't drinking or anything, and even if his blood results do come back and they're clean, the fact that he's in that situation during a fight camp really takes a lot of the focus away of the killer that's standing in front of him and Ponzinibbio. Both these guys kind of barely hanging on to their ranking at 170, and that division's full of sharks. I feel like both these guys have kind of hit their peak, and it's only going to be downhill from here. Neal, he's sporting that 2-fight losing streak, but when you look at him, Stephen Thompson and Neil Magny, they always give people trouble, so it's not really a huge fault on Neal. But even before that, I've never been hugely impressed by him, and he's always been kind of undersized. He kind of reminds me of a Darren Till who's one-dimensional, He's got the good straight left, and then outside of that, it's iffy. I think that if Santiago hadn't have dropped that Jing Liang fight, we'd probably see him at a minus 200 right here. I think both these guys are getting a little bit older, but I do like the fact that we could still see Pons really tough through that Miguel Baeza fight. I think that he's going to be able to tough through this one, where as far as top 15 fighters go that Pons can beat, this is probably one of the only ones.
Man, I don't even know what I could add to that, man. Perfect breakdown in my opinion here. I love that we're jumping the gun, got Ponzinibbio 2 units, like minus 108, and it looks to be, moving against our favor. So I think we've done our job there. In the Geoff Neal articles, man, not only is he just on the 2-fight losing streak, but after the health scare he had, openly talking about, his body just not being the same, and that's definitely not what you want to hear out of your fighter's mouth. And I've been on the pleasure side of being able to fade Neal his last times out. We ended last year out placing a big bet on Stephen Thompson. And, Geoff Neal, primary striker, like you said, very, very one-dimensional. He's only got the left hand, the left high kick. He does hide it pretty well, but how are you going to outstrike Wonderboy Thompson in a striking battle, And then if you're not going to wrestle Neil Magny, he always makes fighting him just a pain in the ass, Where Ponzinibbio, he's went out there and just dusted Neil Magny before, and now, I know he had his own set of health scares, and you're right, he did come back after 18-month layoff and get knocked out by Jing Liang. But I think he just, kind of erased all that, in my opinion, with that fight with Baeza. That first round, dude was getting his calf, chopped up hard. He was getting hit, and chin was holding up. But the adjustments he made coming off his stool into round 2, starting to pressure Baeza and putting him on his back foot and taking those main weapons away. Some of the main weapons that Geoff Neal is going to rely on here. So I like Ponzinibbio, man. I like his forward pressure. I think he's going to be the one in the center of the cage pushing Geoff Neal back and taking away a lot of those weapons that he likes to, to rely on. So I'm going to Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think he probably wins by decision here.
And I definitely, like you said, the line is moving in our favor, and it looks like it's going to continue dropping as all of the books are showing that it's getting to minus 120 or higher.
Nice, man. Moving down through the card, we're in the flyweight division where we see Kai Kara-France taking on Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt goes from, just a year ago fighting Davison Figueiredo for the belt to now fighting, barely a top contender in the division. But I think it's a good fight for Cody Garbrandt to drop down and maybe get his feet wet in the division. And it's an interesting one to me here because, honestly, I think Cody's the better fighter. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's clearly the better boxer. And he's going to come down here and still, I think, have the speed advantage with his hands. The question is just going to be the weight cut. How much is it going to take out of him? We've seen, TJ drop down, look completely sucked out on the scale, and he couldn't take a shot at all. And
that's with EPO.
Exactly. And that does worry me as well for Cody, who's already, shown that he's got an iffy chin in the first place. Kai Kara-France, he comes from the city kickboxing, and, shit's hit the fan in Australia, to be honest with you. The team is open about, catching a lot of flack, having to find places to train. And I know, both Brad Riddell and Hooker were in 2 tough matchups, but both of them look like shit, if you want my honest opinion, in their last time out. And it does worry me a little bit for Kai Kara-France that maybe he's not getting the typical training and looks that he's used to. Like I said, Cody's got all the advantages that I really like here. I just think before I jump the gun on Cody, who line seems to be coming down in my favor, I want to see the weigh-ins. But yeah, I like Cody Garbrandt.
I think that this is one of these spots where it could, in hindsight, be the best value we've had in 2021. As you just said, we texted each other earlier, and it's kind of nuts that Cody Garbrandt getting probably the easiest matchup in the last half decade of his career, and he's
definitely
sitting
in the
at
UFC.
Yeah, definitely in the UFC, and he's a minus 130. Right. Are you serious? Like, I mean, like you said, the weight cut is definitely concerning.
Cody's always been a smaller bantamweight at the same time too,
Right, and he took some tough shots against Asuncao and Rob Font. So as far as his chin not holding up anymore, he's kind of answered those questions for me. I definitely laid off of him in both those two fights I just mentioned, but now I'm feeling a little bit more confident. He's used to having a significant reach disadvantage at 135 pounds, but down a weight class, he has pretty similar physical attributes to his opponent. If Cody was the same age as Dominick Cruz or Pedro Munoz, I'd have a little bit more concern, but fuck, man, he's 30 years old, and I do still think that he has room for improvements. You talked about him having a better wrestling game, and I definitely agree. He has the advantage. But I hope he. Well, I guess that's what I was getting at. Is I hope that he doesn't have to rely on his wrestling, because that sounds like a plan B to me. Right. Cody does that whenever his boxing doesn't work. But with somebody like Kai Kara-France, I think that he's going to get somebody who's willing to stand and bang with him. And as far as I'm concerned, Cody Garbrandt is the side here. And as this line continues to move down, I'll hold off before laying a pretty, couple units on him.
I like it. And you talked about Kai Kara-France coming to bang. I think this honestly has potential to have fight of the night written all over it. And I don't even want to say that this is going to hit the judges' scorecards, but I could 100%. You saw Kai Kara-France fight Brendan Royval. You've seen the multiple fights that Cody has been willing to plant his feet and throw down in. This one's going to be fun. I think fight ending by TKO is a fun little prop to play in this one.
Okay.
I'm on Cody Garbrandt all the way, but France's TKO prop is north of plus 350. And if you're banking on, another bantamweight going down and their chin being compromised, you're getting a hell of a number there.
Our next fight takes us to the bantamweight division, where we see the unranked champ, Sean O'Malley, putting up his undefeated record against Julianna Pena. This is Sean's biggest step up since Marlon Vera. He's the king of can crushers, and I think he's getting a somewhat legitimate test this weekend, although the odds would definitely suggest otherwise. Right. O'Malley, awesome fighter to watch. He's flashy, he talks that big game, and he usually has the skill to back it up. I'd say my biggest knock on Sean has been his lack of knockout power. I'm not saying that like Moutinho or Almeida or Sukumtoth are going to be the ones to expose him, but I think it's only a matter of time. Paiva, he has good size for the division. I know he's an ex-flyweight, but he was always a fucking massive flyweight. And he's on a 3-fight win streak right now that's more impressive than any of Sean O'Malley's wins, if I'm being honest. Usually Paiva's opponents have to take away his offensive weapons by trying to get the fight to the mat, but I don't think we'll see Sean shooting at all. I personally think O'Malley has the skill set of a champion, but if he can't get that knockout, he does tend to get overwhelmed. I think at plus 260, Paiva is definitely the value side, but I'm kind of waiting until weigh-ins to see how he sizes up to Sean.
It's a perfect fight, and to like kick off the pay-per-view and get the people in their seats for the reasons you talked about, Sean. There's a potential always for just a flashy highlight reel KO, to start the pay-per-view. He's looking to finish off what his teammate Kyler Phillips couldn't, and if you want my honest opinion, if Julianna Pena comes in here and shows the same tendencies, the same striking defense, dude, Sean O'Malley is got twice the size, twice the length, twice the speed, twice the striking skill of his counterpart, of his teammate Kyler Phillips. And I honestly think Sean O'Malley comes out here and puts Julianna Pena away. The dude's only 27 years old, and he's going to continue to get better. You saw him on the Contender Series. He looked like a kid, man, and now when you look at him, just the changes in his physique and everything, the only thing that's going to hold Sean O'Malley back is the yes men around him and his ego, because I truly think that he's got all the potential in the world, man. I really do. And with Julianna Pena, he does train at a good camp, Team Alpha Male, and he's coming off, a damn hard-fought win that should have been a fucking draw. Every single media outlet scores it a draw, and how the other two judges don't score round 1 at 10-8 is beyond my belief, but it is what it is. Like Paiva got to show, the dude's extremely durable. He's got a ton of heart, but he only missed weight one time at flyweight. I think once these guys square off, I think Sean O'Malley's going to look so much bigger than him. He fights so much longer than he really is. It's Sean's fight to lose, man. I think he TKOs Paiva in round 1 or 2.
Just playing devil's advocate a little bit. You talked about Sean O'Malley only being 27. Paiva's 26, you know? He is definitely able to make huge improvements in his game. And like I said, him not having to defend the takedowns in this fight, I think will open up his offensive tools that he hasn't been really able to utilize in his past fights.
Yeah, you talked about his 3-fight win streak. You know, Mark De La Rosa is no longer in the UFC. Zhalgas Zhumagulov
before last weekend was a good fighter. Zhalgas and
arguably beat him.
Kyler Phillips, though?
Exactly. Not as good as Sean O'Malley. And, you know, had so many moments to put Raulian Paiva away.
I mean, Almeida, Moutinho, Wineland, and Nunes are all worse than Paiva, in my opinion.
Maybe so, but I just, man.
And Sukum Toth should have won that fight if he didn't shoot the takedown. Sean O'Malley's just sketch for a -300, in my opinion.
I feel you. We're going to come out here and see the Suns between the leg, right hand TKO on Saturday. In the prelim main event, we're in the men's featherweight division where we see Josh Emmett taking on Dan Ige. You know, Emmett trains out of Team Alpha Male, and the guy's returning from a big layoff where he, you know, tore just about everything there is to tear in your knee. The guy's 36 years old, and coming back from that, it's not something I like to back when he was entering, you know, a -225 to start the week. But the dude is absolutely tough as hell. You know, he tears everything in round 1 against Burgos, and you know, not even just the Burgos fight where he comes back and drops Burgos twice, but the Michael Johnson fight where he's down arguably 2 rounds and comes back to land just a knockout that puts Michael Johnson stiff. Mm-hmm. You know, he's got some of the best power in that division. But man, on the side of Ige out of Extreme Couture, I know he's on a 2-fight losing streak to the Korean Zombie and to Cater, but those are 2 of the best boxers in the division, purely boxers, and they're guys who throw literally double the volume of Josh Emmett, who in my opinion kind of sits back and looks to counter too much. Ige, similar to the Gavin Tucker fight, I think Dan Ige is going to have the speed advantage here in the pocket. I think if he's able to sneak a right hand in, you know, maybe exit with the left hook like Jeremy Stevens did, he could cause some trouble. And I see people saying Emmett could have a big success with wrestling, but that ball of muscle, in my opinion, is not going to be able to wrestle for a full 15 minutes, and it could actually be Ige, I think, that mixes in some takedowns to make this one interesting. I got him at +180 with Ige. I'm willing to gamble with that, but sitting at the current line, man, it's kind of a pass at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to just sit and enjoy the violence on this one. Emmett, he has looked great since that Jeremy Stevens loss. With 2 of those 3 wins that he strung together being fight of the night bonuses. Interesting to note about all of those fights is that he came in as an underdog in every single one of them. And, you know, now we see him as a favorite. And like you said, the general public doesn't really like that. Right. They bet him down pretty hard. And Ige, he's coming off a loss, which was definitely his biggest test to date. Went 3 rounds with TKZ and just never really got going. That was definitely one that you want Dan to kind of bounce back from because he got straight up outclassed in that fight. One of my bigger worries about Ige is that he hasn't really won a high-profile fight in his career dominantly by any means. You know, you think about the Mirsad Bektik, the Barbosa fight. Both of those are split decision wins, right. And then the other 2 high-profile fights with Calvin Kattar and TKZ, he's getting outclassed. Yep. Both guys, they've scored huge knockouts recently, but I'm gonna give the power advantage to Emmett. He's kind of like the Francis of the 145-pound division.
Ricardo Lamas knockout.
Yeah, cool. Man. I mean, he has some of the craziest power I've ever seen. I'm gonna lean Emmett. And unless this line jumps to, you know, like a -140 by fight time or something, I'll just be laying off. But Emmett is probably the side. Ige just hasn't shown me any high level performances.
Not 100%. I faded Ige last time against the Korean Zombie. He's some guy that's just kind of good everywhere, but you know, nowhere does he excel. He's just kind of got a ton of heart, ton of determination.
He's a Hawaiian, got a ton of durability, a ton of heart, and good cardio.
And I think he's going to need it here, man. I think if he pushes a high pace, he might win this one on the scorecards. But yeah, I like my +180 on Dan Ige, so I'm gonna still pick him, but I think it's a pass right now for me.
Our next fight takes place in the bantamweight division and is actually our casual cap challenge of the week. I will be taking Pedro Munoz, and you're taking Dom Cruz. This is one of these spots that stand out because you're looking at an ex-champion in Dominick Cruz sitting at near pick'ems right now. Cruz, he's coming off that split decision win over Casey Kenny earlier this year, and he's looking to stay active at 36 years old and kind of ride on that momentum. One thing I'd like to point out before I start this off is if Cruz was in his prime, I'd be with you on the Cruz side here. I just haven't seen a performance since his return from 2016 that would make me want to back him against probably a tougher opponent in Pedro Munoz than his last split decision win over Casey Kenny. I think Munoz is going to have success trying to get at the legs of Dominick Cruz, try and slow down the movement. And I have to agree with the odds makers as far as this fight will probably end up seeing the judges. They've got that at minus 175, and I tend to agree with them. I kind of see this fight being a slower back and forth fight that's won by these small moments. And I kind of trust Munoz to be the more powerful of the two and likely land the more appealing shots to the judges once this hits the scorecards.
Yeah, Pedro Munoz, I definitely think is going to have the more powerful of the two shots. But for me, he's the gatekeeper of bantamweights for me, man. He's just kind of the guy that you got to go through to get to the cream of the crop of the division. And at one time, Dominick Cruz was the cream of the crop of the division. I'm still willing to gamble on that at pick'ems. Pedro Munoz, he's out of American Top Team, trains with good people. He's a BJJ black belt, but honestly just prefers to kind of stand and bang recently. But he, to me, he's just a guy. He's a guy that got all his hype from knocking out Cody Garbrandt. Because other than that, there's not really a whole lot of impressive wins. Maybe Rob Font's guillotine in first round, but Pedro Munoz is just, to me, somebody that I kind of look to fade. And Dom Cruz, I really like him in this matchup. I think with the full octagon, you're going to have a ton of room for Dom Cruz to be able to, skate around the outside and use his movement. And we're going to see Pedro Munoz spend a whole lot of time chasing him, just like he did Frankie Edgar. And I know his calf kick, and, it's probably what he should go to limit the movement of Dom Cruz. But, oh, man, I don't know if Dom Cruz is going to be there for it to land. I think he's going to be dancing around the outside, landing his 1-2s, getting safe out of range. I see him also on Instagram wrestling a whole lot with Penn State's national champion, Roman Bravo Young. I won't be surprised if Dominick Cruz comes out here and mixes a couple takedowns in, to try to win this on the judges' scorecards, pretty much kind of like he did in the Casey Kenny fight. I like the ex-champ Dominick Cruz at Pick'ems, and I'm glad you let me have him.
Mm-hmm.
Moving down through the card, we're to the lone heavyweights of the night. We see Augusto Sakai, who's 15-3-1, taking on Tuivasa, who's 13-3. And honestly, man, this is one of the most exciting fights on the card, honestly. And it's not just because of the heavyweights. Tai Tuivasa is a crowd favorite and one of those guys that I'm just not going to miss a Tai Tuivasa fight,
This was almost the casual cap.
It was almost the casual cap. With Sakai, he's coming off his first-round loss to Jair Rozenstruik. It makes it 2 losses in a row for him. And there was something that, going back and watching our breakdown of that one, is you mentioned Rozenstruik having a speed advantage over Sakai, and that's something that you thought would come into play. And I was on the Sakai side last time. And on this side here, I think that speed advantage is what could cost him here again. Not only that, I think Tuivasa is probably maybe the more polished boxer of the two. And while Sakai is just more of the, the more slumbering, come forward, try to use his pressure and, to back you up and exhaust you, I think that calf is just going to be there to get chewed up, and I think he's going to get stuck in front of Tai Tuivasa, where he probably lands his TKO. But, I'll be honest with you, it's a tough fight for me to cap. It's 100% one of the closest fights on the card, sitting at a pick'em. I'm going to lean ever so slight with Tai Tuivasa to get the TKO.
I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't hate it at all. This is a big step down in competition for Sakai, big step up in competition for Tuivasa. Neither guys really possess the tools in their MMA game to beat the other guy straight up, 7 out of 10 times. They don't have anything to go into the fight having an advantage over the other guy, which is why I see it being a pick'em. I get it. I think that Sakai has the more well-rounded out MMA game, but I'm not so sure that he's willing to shoot. And he's yet to show that wrinkle in his game with a .14 takedown accuracy. As far as stand-up goes, I think it's relatively even. I'll admit that Tuivasa's striking defense is probably poorer, but I think that his offense is a little bit more damaging.
Yeah.
I think that if Sakai can just avoid getting excited like Greg Hardy did and trying to bang it out with him, that he can pick him apart. and kind of dragged his fight out. But you talked about the calf kicks being an issue, and I definitely see that being a problem for him. Kind of happy that we're not putting anything on this fight. More than happy at just enjoying the violence. I'm going to lean Sakai here, but it's not confident by any means.
I think Sakai, like you said, with Tuivasa's last 3 have ended in the first round, where we've seen Sakai go the distance, go to round 5 with Alistair over him. I agree, man. If he wants to make this fight more competitive and start edging in his favor, he should definitely look to take it into deeper waters, not rush the gun, like Greg Hardy did.
Try and bang it out with that bloke. Find another one to bang it out with. Our next fight takes place in the middleweight division, where we see Jordan Wright taking on Bruno Silva. Silva's looked like a killer in his first 2 UFC fights, finishing both Turman and Sanchez, and proving that he can carry that power into the later rounds. In his last fight with Andrew Sanchez, he got taken down 7 times, but worked his way back up to the feet until Sanchez gassed, and he did get that finish. Now Silva has somebody in Jordan Wright who's willing to stand in front of him and try and scrap it out. The Beverly Hills Ninja, he's 2-2 in the UFC, but his wins are not aging very well. One thing that I do want to note is that you'll find out quickly who wins this fight, because neither of these guys like getting the judges involved at all. The under 1.5 is at -160 is the best line you can get it at right now, and it's almost unplayable at that point. Wright, he's a great hammer, but he is an awful nail, and I have to agree with the odds makers that Silva by TKO is the most likely thing to happen.
Dude, Silva by TKO is one of the most for sure things that I think comes to fruition on Saturday. Anytime they're trying to move somebody up the ladder after they get a highlight reel KO, they give him Jordan Wright, man. The dude is just an absolute fade at this point. And you're right, with the last fight with Silva, our underdog shot on Sanchez was going perfectly, just right according to plan, until Sanchez gas tank fails him. And we got to see that heart, like you talked about. We got to see that cardio still look good. We got to see him still carry that power. He started digging to the body of Andrew Sanchez, started dropping his hands, and man, he's going to do the same thing to Jordan Wright. I think he backs him up against the cage. I think he lands a couple good body shots and comes over the top, with a good right hand to put Jordan away. He's a guy that, like I told you, I'm kind of okay that he upset Ike Villanueva and Jamie Pickett, because he's just on the roster for me to continue to fade. He's very, very one-dimensional. He's fought just garbage for competition. He wears a punch like for shit. He will shell up. Man, I don't know. Bruno Blindado Silva is going to TKO this guy more than likely in the first or second round.
One thing that's kind of interesting is coming into the UFC and Alaska FC and LFA, Wright came in with a 3-fight submission win streak. Maybe after he feels the power of Silva, he might go back to that and try and get the fight to the ground.
That is something to think about. Is Bruno Silva proved his takedown defense isn't the best. I like Bruno Silva for personally. I know you don't like it. I got him parlayed with Sean O'Malley, and I'm even thinking about parlaying both of them TKO prop. In our middleweight division, we see Andre Muniz, who's 21-4, taking on Eryk Anders, who's 14-5. Muniz, the dude's 3-0 in the UFC, but when you look at who he's beaten, a lot of them not very impressive. Fabinski, I don't even know if he's in the UFC anymore. I know, what's his name, tall guy who he beat.
Antonio Ahoyo.
Not in the UFC anymore. And then, Jacare Souza, I don't think he's in the UFC anymore. But to be able to take a guy down like that and then, to eventually end up on your back and submit him off your back is a testament to how good Mooney's jiu-jitsu really is. And on the feet, man, he fires off some incredibly hard kicks at you from range. And while I think Eryk Anders is going to have the power in that straight left hand he's got, I don't think neither one of these guys have a significant striking advantage that, that makes me lean to one side. The advantage here is clear for me. It's Andre Muniz's grappling, and the Eryk Anders that we've seen lately has been more than willing to grapple with you. He's been more than willing to put you against the fence and try to grind you away. And I will not be shocked if Andre Muniz pulls guard here and submits Eryk Anders from his guard. I think Andre Muniz money line -135 continues to be one of my better plays this week.
I was actually amazed to see Muniz at -135 here. Coming off the biggest win of his career, this seems like a massive step down in competition for him. Muniz, like you said, high-level ground specialist, and proved that he can work that on UFC caliber competition. Anders, very up and down career, and to be honest, I'm not confident that he's going to be able to make weight at 185 this weekend. That's constantly been an issue for him, and As far as I'm concerned, outside of athleticism on the Anders side, I think that Muniz has him covered just about everywhere.
Yep.
One thing I really like that Muniz showed is in the Antonio Arroyo fight, he showed that he can go out there and at least get one takedown every single round, which is something
hard to get off you.
Yeah, and it's hard to get off you, which is something I really, really like in somebody who's shown me cardio issues in Anders. Muniz, he won't be giving up any size. We're usually 185. Anders is the bigger competitor. I think that he'll have somebody who's just as big as him in front of him on Saturday. And I'm with you. I think Muniz could get the finish on the ground here, but I think it's where he wants to bring the fight. He'll win it.
I agree, man. I think we've already put, 2 units on Muniz at 135, and I think that's one, like I said, continues to be one of my favorite plays this week.
We move down to the women's flyweight division where we see Erin Blanchfield taking on Miranda Maverick. I think Maverick at -130, -135 right here is insane value. You know, she got robbed in her last bout against Macy Barber, and one of the most horrendous decisions that we've seen in the modern era of MMA. Since we've seen Maverick in the UFC, she's kind of evolved her game from a power grappler to kind of a well-rounded MMA fighter, and proven that she can hang with MMA competition like she did with Jillian Robertson. Blanchfield, on the other hand, is just getting her first UFC win, and at only 22 years old, I think that she has some holes in her game still. I'm sorry, I don't really think that the Sarah Alpar win holds much weight in 2021. And as far as I'm concerned, I give Maverick the advantage on the feet and on the ground, and I think her biggest advantage will be her physical strength, which is a huge thing to have in MMA, where she'll most likely win these clinch situations, and her ability to muscle the fight to the ground will be a massive difference maker in this fight. I think they're kind of at two different points in their career where Maverick is taking a huge step down and Blanchfield is by far taking the biggest fight of her life. I think Maverick at -135 is an absolute lock.
So, you know what I don't take anything away from in 2021, and that's beating Liana Jojua. This fight for me, man, it's incredibly difficult to cap.
That was 2020, by the way.
My initial feeling, was maybe that Maverick could be a little too much because she's just so physically strong. But then, stylistically, when I look at this fight, man, I think Blanchfield really does have the tools to hang with her. And I know Sarah Alpar is not really a victory just to ride home about, but it was complete domination from start to finish. And then, she's beaten Victoria Leonardo, Kate Hansen, and dude, I watched the Tracy Cortez's fight this week, and it's a coin flip who takes that one. And there's it's 3 girls on the UFC roster, regardless of how they step up, against Miranda Maverick. I think Erin Blanchfield is, I don't know. I think she might not be at that point right now, but I think her career can go further than Miranda Maverick's. The Miranda Maverick, I don't know, man. She's good on the feet. She throws a good 1-2 right down the middle, and I talked about her being incredibly strong, or maybe she might be able to stuff the takedowns for Blanchfield, but I think Blanchfield may be able to find her way on top of Miranda Maverick, and just Miranda gets stuck there. It's a toss-up for me, man. I'm incredibly, hard in seeing Miranda just decisively win this one, or Erin decisively win this one. I think it 100% goes to decision. It's dog or pass, honestly, for me. I'm going to go Blanchfield by decision, honestly.
I don't know. That sucks. I wish we were both on it. I see maybe it does go to decision, but I see a 30-26 from Maverick.
Nice. Moving down to the men's flyweight division, we see Alex Perez taking on Matt Schnell. They've tried to put this fight together a couple times now, a couple pullouts here and there. Finally getting it here on Saturday. Perez, he's coming off his title shot loss to Francisco Figueiredo. He's been out of the cage for about a year now, and it's that first fight back, is always kind of a tricky one, because you worked your way all the way up to the top, you strung those wins together, and then you come up short against a champ. You got to do it all over again. So, hopefully Perez got the right head on his shoulders on Saturday. He trains out of Team Oyama. The guy's a fantastic wrestler. That's a big advantage he'll have over Matt Schnell here. We also saw in the Formiga fight, man, his calf kick is incredible, and just Schnell being so much taller, trying to work behind that jab, I think that calf kick of Perez should be a big weapon he has here. And then the power on the feet, is definitely on the side of Perez. We've seen Schnell be real chinny in the past. So honestly, I like Perez here. I like him in a parlay. I think he's got Matt Schnell covered everywhere. If Matt Schnell does find a way to win this one, maybe it's Perez making another mistake on the mat, Matt Schnell locking up some type of submission off his back or a guillotine on a sloppy takedown. Yeah, man, I like Perez. Like I said, I think he's got him covered everywhere.
Yeah, I think Perez is also the side. You talked about him getting the title shot and having to work his way back up. Thankfully, he's still under 30 years old. Yeah. I mean, the dude has all the time in the world to kind of complete his game. And, it is tough to bet on at a minus 330 price tag. I think Schnell is decent. I just don't think that he has the best fight IQ. As we've seen throughout his career, he struggles knowing when to turn up the heat and when to kind of hold back a little bit. In his last fight with Bontorain, he ate plenty of those calf kicks, limited his movement, and like you said, that's going to be the story of this fight. Perez, one of the nastiest calf kicks in the division. As far as I'm concerned, I really like playing Perez inside the distance. I'm not sure if he'll end up getting that TKO or wind up in a submission after hurting Schnell. He does have plenty of submission finishes as well. And then to top that off, Schnell has been finished in 5 of his 6 losses, and the only one he didn't was the Bontorain one, which was about 10 seconds away from getting stopped. I think that Perez is the side here, sitting at minus 330 straight up versus getting him inside the distance at plus 175. Ton of value in my opinion. So I'm definitely going to be playing Perez inside the distance.
I'll probably be dabbling on that myself, but I think for the podcast, we actually do have him parlayed with something that we'll get to here in just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Our next fight is in the 145-pound division where we see Ryan Hall taking on Darrick Minner. Honestly, an insane matchup and not really a mystery why the UFC put these two together. These are two of the most dangerous grapplers in the division, and in a division that's kind of saturated with wrestlers, they kind of want to weed the best of the best out. Both these guys are coming off of getting their ass beat. Yeah. I know Preston, not a huge fan of Ryan Hall here, but as far as pure jiu-jitsu skills go, I would say he's one of the better guys in the division. But he's up against a grappler who is definitely more willing to throw hands than he is, and probably is the stronger of the two. I have no doubt with Minner's history of early finishes and submissions that he's willing to test his ground game with Ryan Hall. And I'll admit, if it does wind up in a 50-50 position and Ryan Hall's in there, I'll probably kiss my ticket goodbye. But I do think that he's kind of overrated, especially when it comes to the danger of his submissions. He was able to get away with the Imanari rolls in The Ultimate Fighter and against 40-year-old BJ Penn. But I do think that Minner's going to be able to avoid those submissions for 3 rounds. From what I can see, he's like the plus 180, and knowing that he'll probably end up in top position and showing that he can grapple for 15 minutes if he needed, I like Darrick Minner here as an underdog.
Nothing makes me happier than seeing you get on that Ryan Hall fade train, baby. The guy, he trains out of 50-50 MMA. That's really what he specializes in the leg locks, and the guy's a very diverse submission artist. He would whoop my ass, and I don't want to just go out on a limb and say his wrestling and jiu-jitsu is not good, but the guy's not shown it to me. He's not shown that he can proactively go out there and take somebody down and hold them down. He showed me that he can Imanari roll and he can stay out at range and keep you at range with his teep kicks and potentially land a spinning heel kick if your name is Darren the Damage Elkins. I don't know, man. Ryan Hall, like I said, he's just always been a big fade to me because I don't really think he's UFC level, man. He's just got that one aspect that he's very good at, but when that one aspect, it's great for grappling tournaments when you start, when you're just grappling, but when you're thrown into the cage and fighting, it's not the same, man. And when guys can rain bombs on you the way Ilia Topuria was, man, highlight of my year, to be honest with you, seeing that. And with Darrick Minner, he trains out of Glory MMA. He's coached by James Krause. And it seems like every one of those fighters always come out with a wrestling-heavy game plan early, and they all don't have the gas tank to back it up. We see it with Gino Mazzani. We see it with Tim Elliott. We see it with Grant Dawson time and time again out of that camp. And Minner has shown it time and time again in his 30-some-odd fights. The guy comes out there, guns a-blazing round 1. He tries to get on top of you, but, man, shit hits the fan come round 2 and 3, and he starts to fade. But the one fight I want to bring up is the Charles Rosa fight. And it's because it goes to full distance, because Charles Rosa is happy to play that jiu-jitsu game with him. He's happy to accept the bottom position. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a similar case here. Ryan Hall's not going to, like I said, doesn't have that wrestling to just proactively continue to work back to his feet and make Minner work. And I think it's just another opportunity for me to fade Ryan Hall this time. And I get to do it at even plus 180 price tag. I like Darrick Minner here. But I also see his cardio issues. It doesn't go the distance. Sitting at minus 135 is something that I might actually hit as well. But give me the dog and Darrick Minner, and I'm so happy that you see that as well. Mm-hmm. Moving down through the prelims, next up is Randy Costa taking on Tony Kelly in our bantamweight division. Randy Costa, he trains out of Sanford MMA, and the guy is coming off, the loss to Adrian Yanez, where I don't know how much better he could have looked in round one, It's just, unlike a lot of the other people that have stood in front of him, Yanez was still there in round two, and you really saw the mismanagement of the gas tank. You saw a pace that just nobody's able to sustain for 15 minutes. And come round two, you could see it in his eyes, man. He kind of wanted out of there, and that's something you never saw in Adrian Yanez the entire round one, Randy Costa, I hope he's matured a little bit. I hope he's a bit more patient, manages the gas tank a little bit better. But at the same time, that guns ablaze in round one is what's got him to where he is today, So I don't know how much I really want him to change. That aggressive style of coming out in round one, sticking the jab in your face, hiding that high kick. Like I said, it's what got Randy Costa to the UFC, and I don't know how much he wants to change of that. He's going to have a massive speed advantage, I think, here over Tony Kelly on the feet. But at the same time, Kelly's never been finished, so I don't know if Costa's going to go out there and put this guy away, and that's what makes it interesting is if this goes late, you've seen Tony Kelly be in a high-paced fight, take-home fight of the night against Kai Kamaka. He went 3 rounds last time out. He went 5 rounds, in his last fight before coming to the UFC, or 2 fights before coming to the UFC, something like that with Aguilar. So, man, if it gets out of the first round, it could get interesting. I think Tony Kelly is the best live betting spot on the card, but I'm going to still go with Randy Costa because I still think he's a better fighter. I do.
So, man, this is a tough one for me to break down because, like you said, Costa is our boy. But I do think that we're about to see a fight between somebody who's kind of shown us he is a little bit of a quitter versus somebody who's been tested multiple times and refuses to give up in Tony Kelly. You talked about Costa training at Sanford, and he looks in good shape. But like you said, we kind of only have what he's shown up till this point to go off of. I'm not going to jump to conclusions.
I see him run a bike on there, and me and bikes, I don't think they do that much for the cardio.
Right. So I there's no way that I can jump to a conclusion that he's going to change anything in his game. I try and put my bias aside, but he really is that first round or bust fighter. Yeah. Absolute nightmare in round one, but he takes that significant dip in output afterwards. And Tony Kelly, on the other hand, bench a decision last 4 of his last 5 fights. And had to overcome some pretty adverse moments in those fights. There was a clear discrepancy in the odds that I didn't like, and it was the fight doesn't go to decision is sitting at minus 225. Costa inside the distance is minus 110, and Kelly inside the distance is plus 350. I personally think that if Kelly can last to the second round, that there is a very good chance that Costa gives up, quits. And at plus 350, I've already actually taken a stab at that. I think that it's good enough value to warrant it, but I also wouldn't be like totally surprised if Randy Costa goes out there and starches him like he has.
Yeah, in the past. If I'm picking Costa, I am not putting him in a parlay or nothing like that. Minus 190, minus 200. I'm taking his first round TKO prop, and that's about it. Tony Kelly. To be honest with you, if you just wait live, you might get that plus 350 or something if he is able to escape round one. But yeah, I think if it gets out of round one, damn, this fight gets super interesting, and the odds definitely start swinging in Tony Kelly's favor.
Here's another thing: Randy Costa's really used to being the much bigger fighter at 135, exactly. But now with Kelly coming down at 135 and his weight cut look good, he matches up very well size-wise. He's actually the exact same size, but he'll probably carry more weight or more muscle on him. And yes, much like Brandon Davis. That's I think that we could probably see a little upset here in Kelly's favor.
I like it.
Kicking off the fight card, we go to the women's flyweight division where we see Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Jillian Roberson. One of the more interesting matchups because we see Priscilla coming off of 2 consecutive knockouts as a plus 275 to Roberson, who's on back-to-back losses right now. Roberson, she hasn't really proven in her career that she's this high-level fighter, so for her to be favored this much is just odd. Her wins aren't even aging that well, with only one person in her last 6 UFC wins still fighting in the organization. She did spend the majority of her camp at Team Elevation, which I do like. But Priscilla's been fighting in Brazil and training alongside Amanda Lemos. And I think that there's the knockout artist. I think that there's an argument that we have seen improvements in Priscilla's game up until this point, where Jillian's kind of stayed mediocre throughout her career. And having that fight-ending knockout power in the women's division is a huge X factor when it comes to breaking down these fights. So I do think that the line is wide. I wouldn't trust Priscilla with a whole unit, but I think 0.5 units is honestly worthy.
She gets so much flack for the loss to Valentina and the ass whooping from Valentina, and honestly, you think that would have passed, seeing how Valentina has blossomed into the reigning flyweight champ that's never going to lose that belt. I don't know, man. This fight right here is probably one. I don't know how much time I'll spend on it. I don't have a ton of interest on it. It is dog or pass, 100%. Priscilla, and I think if you want to bet her, I think you bet her by TKO, more than likely in rounds 2 or 3. I saw, she went out and got the quick finish over Shayna Dobson, but I think the for sure thing I can see here is that Jillian Robertson has the grappling advantage, and Jillian Robertson does not go out there and strike with anybody. I know for certain what Jillian Robertson's going to do in every fight, and that's going to shoot for a takedown. And we saw Gina Mazzani, until she gassed, have a ton of success with that. So, I think it's going to be a very much replicable performance. I think Jillian Robertson is going to have success with her wrestling and her takedowns. It's going to be, can her cardio, keep it up enough to not let Priscilla continue to work back to her feet and exhaust her to where, she can find that TKO again. Yeah, it is dog or pass, so if I'm inclined to play anything, it's probably going to be, Priscilla TKO spot or Priscilla as a dog, but early in the week right now, I've stayed off of it completely. That concludes all the breakdowns for the 15 fights this Saturday for UFC 269. As always, going to recap real quick. We got the casual cap this week on Dominick Cruz taking on Pedro Munoz. What do you know? We pick another pick'em fight that we're disagreeing with here. I'm going to go with the ex-champ, the veteran Cruz, and give you Munoz there. And what do you know? Probably it's the judge's scorecard. Makes it interesting.
Decision
exactly.
For sure.
As for the fight of the night, what's the fight everybody needs to keep their eyes on, man?
You got to look at the Ige versus Emmett. I think Ige has the durability and Emmett has the power that we're going to see some fireworks and some huge shots being eaten.
And that's the prelim main event, man. So they've got that in a killer spot. For me, it's going to be Garbrandt and Car France. I've seen Cody Garbrandt multiple times be willing to plant those feet and sling hooks with somebody. And Car France has got the kickboxing background and the reputation to just be willing to get in there and bang as well. I will not be surprised if this fight ends by TKO. And until it does, I think both guys are going to be throwing down. I think that's going to be a fun one in the flyweight division, actually. What about a fighter for you?
Fighter for me, it's got to be Sean O'Malley. I mean, he's already dyed his hair this week. He's going to be talking shit, and this is a huge step up for him. Yep. All the pressures on him, and Julian Paiva is just kind of being set up to get worked.
I'd much rather be in Paiva's spot here than O'Malley. He's got all the pressure, and I love that he's your fighter to watch. For me, it's going to be Dustin Poirier. Charles Oliveira has kind of been considered, he beat Michael Chandler. Nobody's kind of really given him the respect, and people are, Gaethje's the one that's been through the ringer, fought the competition, 2 wins over Conor. People kind of look at him as the rightful lightweight champ, and I don't want that to go to his head on Saturday. I think he's the one with the pressure. He's the one everybody has got their eyes on. He's the one that needs to go out there to compete on Saturday. I like Dustin Poirier's mind to keep his eyes on. What about an underdog for you?
My underdog's going to be Derek Minner. I don't love saying that, but I do think that he's got a very winnable fight in front of him and kind of an overvalued fighter in Ryan Hall that he's facing.
I love hearing all that from you. My underdog, Dominick Cruz, is now sitting at plus money on DraftKings at plus 100. He's got the big cage. I guarantee you it goes to decision. And, man, Pedro Munoz is not going to be able to hit what I don't think he's going to be able to touch, man. So I like Dominick Cruz as my underdog. For my prop, I'm going to go with Silva, Bruno Silva to TKO Jordan Wright. Shocker there, right? It's not plus money or anything. It's like minus 175 or I don't even know, minus 150. I don't know what it is. Could be getting it confused with Amanda Nunes' TKO prop. But yeah, I like Bruno Silva to go out there and TKO Jordan Wright probably in rounds 1 or 2.
Minus 150. I think that there is a lot of value on that. For my prop, I think I'm going to go Perez inside the distance. I know that they're smaller guys, but Perez sitting at a minus 330 and having every advantage known to man.
Yep.
I think that he's probably going to get this fight done inside the distance, and getting him at plus 175 is a huge step up in value and something that I think...
I was about to say, you're getting a minus 335 to plus 175. I almost take that anytime, you know. For me, I'm going to go with the best bet, and that's going to be for Andre Muniz. You know, we got him at a -135 for 2 units. I hope some more love comes in for Eryk Anders, man, who's a guy for me who has not really developed a skill set as his time been in. He's still one of those that relies on his power and his athleticism and his grinding style up against the cage. You're not going to want to clinch up with Muniz, who can pull guard and submit you. So I like Muniz as my best bet on Saturday.
I love it. Mine, similar odds. I got Miranda Maverick at -135. She's my best bet. I just think that she's got old Blanchfield covered, and Blanchfield's kind of taken way too big of a step up too quick at her, age of 22 years old.
I think it could have most definitely have potential to see that. That one is one of the 2 fights that I think is extremely difficult to cap. But I like that you see Maverick there, and hope he makes some money on Saturday. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to throw us a like, sub to the channel. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.